Well, somehow it's already December, so we've got a new memory verse. So we've got little cards over there at the back. Make sure you take one home and work on memorizing. It'll be John 1:14. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld His glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. We want to continually be storing up the Lord's Word in our hearts, and these little memory verses are one little way to do that. And so, plus we tend to make more cards than we physically need here, so it's a good opportunity to give them away. Okay? Other folks could use some scripture too. All right, have your Bibles. I hope you do. Turn to chapter 12 of Romans. As you will recall, chapter 12 is getting into the toe-stomping portion of Romans, where we have to take and think, okay, the Lord has worked this great salvation, this wonderful mercy, completely of God and by His grace, and nothing that you've done to earn it or achieve it, and Jesus Christ is victorious. This is wonderful. What do you do today? How do you serve today? And so I've mentioned verses 1 and 2 as kind of a theme or a thesis for the rest of the letter, because it's in this application line. So what do you do? Generally, you present your bodies as a living sacrifice. You are voluntarily yielding yourself up to God, saying, God, I'm yours. Use me in a way that glorifies you. Holy and acceptable unto God. Who defines what is right and acceptable? It's God, right? Which is our reasonable service. God is not calling us to do anything that is unreasonable, that is illogical, that is beyond. Rather, He's calling us to this reasonable service. So, 1, our bodies, living sacrifice. Lord, they're yours. What does that look like? Read the next 4 chapters. Right? It's going to unpack that. And it starts with the idea of not being conformed to this world. There's going to be a contrast, not like that, but like this. And it's going to be this pattern over and over again in this chapter of giving us, all right, there's some things we don't need to do, because that looks like the world. And there's many things that we do need to do that the world is going to say, y'all are nuts. And that's crazy. And yeah, in many senses, to a worldly carnal mind, the things that we're going to call you to are crazy to them. But so is the gospel. Right? This is to the unregenerate, the one who has not been born again. You tell them the gospel, who Jesus is and what He's done, and that's just foolishnness. So it should make sense that what He tells you to do in response to that is also foolishness. All right, well, it starts with verses 3 through 8, where we looked at, starting with the idea of don't think more highly of yourself than you ought to. What do you think the world is more likely to advocate for? Self-promotion, pride, look at me, I'm the one, I'm the influencer, I'm the, right? It's all the me-centric mind. Whereas in God's church, in Jesus' church, as He's designed it, you're not to consider yourself to be the best. Jesus is the best, and you're a humble servant. And if you want to be promoted as a servant, then guess what? That means you get to serve more, right? And the apostles were constantly arguing, who's going to be the best? I mean, we are on this train early. We're at the ground level. We've got the master right here. We are at His feet. Who among us 12, is going to be the best? And Jesus had to get on to them over and over and over. He said, that's like the Gentile world. That's like the outside, that they get to be the top and puppet masters. He said, that's not you. He that's going to be greatest in my kingdom is going to be least. It's going to be the servant of all. All right? So you know what the term minister is? Minister, that's so fancy. It just means servant. All right, so leading by serving, all right? So reducing our pride, approaching our gift to the Lord, and how we're using the gifts He gives us with humility, and then whatever that is. And there's going to be a multitude of gifts and different ways to serve. It's not just all one thing. And you've got this word picture of the church being like a body, right? Jesus is always the head, His brain, His vision, that's what you're seeking to fulfill. And there's a lot of different moving pieces. And some may look nicer than others, but often the ones that aren't as pretty have the more important function. Right? And there's this illustration throughout Corinthians that kind of really draws on that word picture. We're not going to rehash that, but that's our first lesson of how are we going to present our bodies? Well, we present it with first humility, and then, Lord, use me. The talents that you've given me, let me use them in your service. All right. So that gets us down to chapter 12, verse 9. And you've got these two expressions. Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good. All right, well, I count at least 3 words in there that if I were to ask David, what are we talking about? I don't know. Love without dissimulation. To dissimulate is to lie. It's to pretend. It's to put up a face, a front, a veneer, a facade. Insert your synonyms here. But it's to lie. You are to love without lying. And we're going to talk kind of extensively about that today. And then the second portion is abhor that which is evil. Well, what's to abhor something? That means to be utterly disgusted. Just absolutely despise, disgust. That's to abhor. My wife will tell you that she abhors English green peas. She's shaking her head, but she's just, they're disgusting, right? Well, that attitude of just disgust and revulsion is how we need to consider that which is evil, that which is injurious, that which is not upright, unjust, does not glorify God. Because again, we're offering our bodies as living sacrifices to God. Lord, use me, use my talents, use everything. Well, what do I have to have in my attitude to that which I'm around? Well, one, he says that you've got to love without lying. And that which is evil, you've got to be disgusted by it. What do you think God does? Do you think he loves without lying? Absolutely. And yet at the same time, he is disgusted by evil and by sin. And so we want to follow the pattern of our master, of Jesus Christ. And so he's breaking it down. The Apostle Paul is in great detail in this chapter. But this is very similar to the first couple of verses of these. You can see this contrast. That which is good, love without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. And then to repeat it, kind of that sandwich. You ever had that compliment sandwich where you give the compliment, then you give the criticism and the compliment? Right? You got the good and the negative and the good. Love without dissimulation, love without lying. Be disgusted by evil. Cleave to that which is good. All right? This, when I think of cleaving, I think of like a meat cleaver. Like, that's, those big funky butcher block things that you use for a butcher. That's not the cleave that we're talking about here. This is more like going back to Genesis when God made man and there was no helpmeet for her. Then he made a woman out of his bones, and he came, and you have the concept, the institution of marriage that was created there back in Genesis, where you've got God bringing Eve to Adam, and they became one flesh. They were a unit, this new thing called marriage. And so at the end of that second chapter, it says, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave unto his wife. And so that cleave has the idea to adhere, to glue, to stick to follow after, to pursue. All of that elements is what we got here in that which is good. All right? Sticking to that which is good and being disgusted and reviled by that which is evil. Both without and within. Okay? All right. So, what I would like to do is give a rather lengthy illustration of loving with dissimulation. So, well, why would you want to do that? Well, sometimes you got to look at what the wrong thing looks like so you can understand what not to do. So, let's go back in time. Only a boy named David, right? Killed a giant. Saul said, oh, come on, you're going to come stay at my castle. You're going to be awesome. I'm going to promote you to general. And then some ladies made some comments about how great David was. And the king got jealous. And he says, you know what, David? He needs to die. And David had to basically flee from the king for quite a while. And he's living hunted as the king wants to kill him. He's not done anything wrong. But because the king is fearful that his kingdom will pass to this young man, fast forward a little bit farther, that king eventually dies. He's killed in battle. And David comes, he had been in exile, he'd been in the wilderness, he'd been hiding, and And he's got a band of men who follow him now. And he asked the Lord, Lord, should I go up into my home nation now? And God told him, yes, you're going to go up to Hebron. That's one of those cities of refuge. You go up to Hebron, and the tribe of Judah, remember there's 12 tribes, the tribe of Judah receives David, and they say, we want you to be king. David says, oh, that's great. And so he winds up having a kingdom there in Judah. But the king that had been pursuing him, his name was Ishbosheth. He was not the ideal choice to be king. He had 3 older brothers. They were all slain with his dad the same day. And his dad's general, I believe his name was Abner, he took, King Saul, Abner was his uncle. All right, so he took his great nephew, Ishbosheth, and says, you're going to be the king, right? You're going to follow after your daddy. And most of the tribes followed Ishbosheth, okay? Well, there wound up being strife between these 2 kingdoms. We always talk about the divided kingdoms after Solomon. It was a divided kingdom beforehand. And so David is wound up going to rule over that little portion of just the nation of Judah for 7 years. And so there's strife and there's fighting back and forth. And there's a particular scene. Well, let me tell you another character. So you got David as the king of Judah. You've got Ishbosheth is the king of Israel, all the other tribes. And his general is his great uncle Abner. Well, David had a general too. And his name was Joab. Joab is a jerk. All right, I'm just going to give it away. Joab is terrible. Now, Joab is also David's nephew. Probably older than David. Remember, David was the younger brother. Well, David had some sisters. And this particular sister had 3 sons. And so they were all part of David's army. And so you've got the general from the north, Abner, brings some men out of his territory, comes down towards Judah. And David's general, Joab, takes some men. And they kind of sit down on the side of this pool. And they're kind of having a little stare down. And the old guy, Abner, says, why don't we let the boys play? What does that mean? Well, 12 from this side and 12 from this side. It's like the worst football match ever. They get up and they commence to have armed combat. And there's not a definitive winner from that because all the other guys eventually engage. And you've got this terrible, bloody battle and a lot of people dying. And these are all brothers, right? They're all part of the same family of Israelites, but they're killing each other. Well, the northern guy, Abner, his team is getting the worst end of it. And so he starts running. And he's an older guy. And this younger brother of Joab, the southern general, starts chasing him down. And he's like, hey, are you Joab's brother? He's like, yeah. He's like, go get someone else. No. He's like, come on, look, there's all these other men. You kill one of them, you take their armor, leave me alone. Like, I'm fleeing, I'm running from the scene. And the guy wouldn't. And he wouldn't. And he wouldn't. He said, I really would hate to kill you, because then how would I show myself to your brother? And the guy wouldn't. The younger brother he's really fleet of foot. He's described how fast. You can go read this. This is 2 Samuel. Fascinating stuff. Well, so the old guy takes his spear and being a wily man of war, rams it backwards and runs him through. And that guy, the younger brother of Joab, drops dead. And so, the rest of the troops are still fleeing. And Joab's got his troops and they're all chasing after him. Well, finally, Abner gets his troops to the top of a hill, the sun's setting, and they're kind of, reformed. When you're retreating, you're just running crazy. Well, they get a little bit of a, protectionary stance, and they call out and say, how long are you going to chase us? It's been a really bad day. It's only going to get worse. And so Joab says, all right, we'll quit. We'll go back home. And they go back home, and they take their dead and their wounded. And Joab is really, really, really mad that his brother's been killed. Now, his brother's been killed in battle. All right, this is not somewhere he's been slain or somebody who's broke into his house, and so it's different than the traditional rules that we're looking at in Deuteronomy about committing murder. And he tried to give him. He gave him like 3 or 4 chances to please go away, leave me alone. I'm running away, and so he didn't. Well, time passes. All right, and that general winds up having an occasion to be upset with his king. Ishbosheth accuses him of trying to take his dad's concubine. And Abner's like, I have been loyal to you. You're treating me like this dog. He says, God said that David's going to have the kingdom. You know what? God can curse me if I don't help make that happen. And so he turns to his loyalties. And so he's like, goes around and talks to all the heads of Israel. He says, you know what? You wanted to have David to be your king earlier. I put Ishbosheth up. Tell you what, let's make that happen. And so he's like doing all this politicking of we're going to get all the tribes and we're going to go follow David. The civil war is going to end, right? It's going to be great. And so he goes to David. David receives him. He's so happy with the news. He says, all right, that's great. You go home. You make this happen. I've got a league with you. The civil war will end. Well, guess who wasn't at the capital when Abner came for this visit? Joab. Joab, whose baby brother was killed. Joab gets back, and he'd been on a raiding party, and they'd been successful. They've got all this spoil. He's and he hears that the king let Abner come to town and leave in peace. So he sends messengers after Abner. He says, the king wants to have some additional words with you. Come on back. And so he hadn't gotten very far. He comes back, and Joab pulls him aside. Let's just have a quiet conversation over here. And he pulls out a knife and he stabs him and kills him. And David is very upset. Because what has he just ruined? The chance of ending the war by his personal vengeance and grievous, spite against this guy who had slain his brother in warfare. He has now allowed his vengeance to impact thousands of different people amongst the nation by not allowing this war to end. And that war would continue to go on for quite a while. Eventually, there were some men in Ishbosheth's army, some lower captains, not a general, who would betray him and kill him in his bed. That would bring it all to an end. But this is Joab, who calls to somebody, pretends that we're about to have a friendly conversation, and then slays him. And this is David's general. Now, we know a lot about David in the stone, but he had a lot more going on in his life. And so, basically, all of 2 Samuel is the story of David as king, good, and a lot of ill, and a lot of shenanigans. Well, later when he has been reigning a long time, and as a consequence of his adultery with Bathsheba and the turmoil that was prophesied he would have in his house, his third-born son, Absalom, tries to overthrow him. Now, Absalom, I won't get into all the backstory on why he got banished. Needless to say, his brother, half-brother, had very seriously injured his sister, and he waited 2 years plotting having him over for supper and then murders him. King banishes him for several years, and then Joab arranges for somebody to convince the king to have him brought back. Well, once he's back, he goes on this campaign to try to convince the nation that really Dad's not doing this great job of hearing your cases. You're coming in, and if only there was a deputy, someone who could I know your case is right, because that was part of the role of the king. You have to decide between two people about who was right in their argument or their dispute. And so through this kind of subtle campaign, he gets these people to think he'd be a much better king. We really ought to have him. And so eventually he asked Dad permission. I'd like to go down to Hebron, and I made a vow to God, right? Using God as an excuse. He takes a couple hundred men down there with him, and they send out spies throughout the land and say, all right, y'all tell everybody, Absalom's now reigning in Hebron. And so you've got this very secret conspiracy that's now blown up into this full-blown rebellion, and it is so bad that David sees the writing on the wall. He's been reigning a long time now. He's in the older part of his life. He's like, I've got to get out of this city, or it's going to be destroyed for my sake. And so he and most of his court flees Jerusalem, which was the capital at this point, actually flees all the way out of Judah, flees across the Jordan River, just to save their skin, trying to stay alive. And so the Lord preserves him and allows him to amass up some loyal followings, enough so you can have this great big battle. And so before they go out to battle, David charges all of his people. He says, I want you to fight well, but please go easy on my rebellious son. It's still his kid. It's his third-born son. He didn't want him to kill him. And so we heard about donkeys the other day. Well, this time the guy's riding a mule. Absalom is fighting, and he's losing the battle, and so he starts running, riding his mule, and there's an oak tree with these branches or whatever. Well, somehow he got tangled up in these branches by his head, and he's just dangling. And David's men see it, and they go tell the general Joab, hey, Absalom's over there in a tree. And Joab's mad. He says, why didn't you kill him? I would have given you 10,000, shekels of silver or something. You go read it exactly. And the guy's like, you could give me 10 times that much, but my king told me not to do it. And I know that if I had, you would come and kill me yourself because I disobeyed the king. So the messenger wasn't having it. Well, Joab goes and he takes some spears, and he runs through Absalom and kills him. And then his personal bodyguard, they just hack him down, throw him in a pit, and throw some rocks on him. So David's army wins the day. His kingdom is safe. But because his word has been ignored by his own nephew, who again is probably older than Joab, his son's dead. And so he's grieving and he's upset. And so you know what he does to Joab? He fires him. You're out. And so I've got this other, I think it's a great nephew, one of his other, sisters, grandkids, and he promotes, you're going to be my general. Well, wouldn't you know it, by the time they get back to the capital, there's some other trouble in paradise, and so that general's got to lead an army and go squish a little rebellion. And so they start to go, and they're moving not quite as fast as David would like. He said, in 3 days, I want you to go. And so they were going a little slower. And so he winds up dispatching Joab's other remaining brother. He says, you go get your men and you go catch that guy. Because there was one guy who was trying to stir up this rebellion. We just really needed him gone. Well, in the midst of that, you've got David's force led by this lawful general, Amasa, I believe is his name, which is also Joab's cousin. Okay? Family trees. So Amasa's going with his forces, and Joab and his brother are coming with these other forces, and they overtake him, and he comes up to Amasa, and he pulls him aside, says, art thou in health, my brother? And he grabs him by the beard in a friendly way, and goes in to give him a kiss. Now, this is a different culture, right? Man, we don't greet each other with a kiss, but, over in Europe, they're saying hello. They got different cultures. This was a friendly gesture among kinfolk of I am coming, I want to know how you're doing. All right, we've been going after this guy. How are you doing? Well, he happened to have a sword strapped to his side that had fallen out as he was walking. So it's like he kind of bent down to pick it up. How you doing? Grabs him by the beard to lean in for a kiss. And kills his cousin. Betrays him with a kiss because he'd taken his job. And there he is. And he didn't kill him real well because he just described him wallowing in his blood. He said, Brother Jonathan, this is too graphic. It's in your Bible. That was really interesting. And really hard. I mean, this is reality. This is the vileness of sin. And so all of Amasa's men are like coming up, and they're seeing their leader there in his blood. And one of Joab's guys, drags him off the side and throws a cloak on him and says, hey, if you're loyal to David, you better get going. And so they kept on going. So this is Joab. This is who at one point David said, these sons of Zeruiah, that's his sister, are too much trouble for me. They're too hard for me. They're basically, the Lord's going to have to deal with them. And eventually, after David's death, as he's dying, he tells Solomon, you remember these guys. You remember what harm they've caused. And so Solomon has Joab executed eventually. But I say all that, very graphic, very long story, is that this was love with dissimulation. Joab, at least on 2 occasions, pretended to be friendly with somebody to literally stab them. Okay? Now that's a pretty stark visual word picture that you should be able to hang on to remember this. Let love be without dissimulation. Here's an example of what not to do, right? Another example of affection being used to betray somebody is in the Garden of Gethsemane. When Judas came, he brought a crowd from the priests. They had torches, they had sticks, they had staves. The only problem is they didn't know exactly who they were supposed to get. It's dark, right? There's no street lights in the Garden of Gethsemane. And so they had a sign beforehand, and Judas says, all right, whoever I go up and give a kiss to, that's who you take. Hold him fast. And so he comes into the garden, hail, master. And Jesus, and then this is at the end of Matthew 24 and Luke 22. You got to read them both to get the full expression. But he basically asked him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? Wherefore art thou come, friend? Right? This idea of that Judas was coming, and he does kiss him. He gives him this kiss of this affection, and yet behind it he was hiding malicious intent. And then Jesus is obviously arrested. Right? So there's two different examples of what you can hold on. This is love with dissimulation, where you are pretending or feigning love, but really having ulterior motives and design. One of those looks a lot like the world. Loving without dissimulation is what it looks like when you're actually yielding yourself to the Lord and using your body as a living sacrifice. All right. Maybe that was helpful. Maybe that'll help. Maybe I just gave you way too much information. Go read all of 1 Samuel and it'll make a lot more sense. All right. Let love be without dissimulation. Right? We're talking to believers, we're talking to the church, we're talking to, this young baby church that he hasn't even had a chance to go talk to, the Apostle Paul in Rome. Well, what do they need to love? Well, what's the great commandment? Love the Lord thy God with all your heart, soul, mind, body, everything you got. Okay? What would be an example of loving the Lord with dissimulation? Well, that would be what the Pharisees were guilty of, where I am making this show of service to the Lord. I am praying as long as somebody's seeing me and I'm getting credit for this. Right? I'm praying on the street corner so everyone can know how religious I am. Right? If I'm making, giving gifts to the temple, well, let me make sure I can do it at the time when everyone's around. Right? Certainly wouldn't want to be discreet. If I'm fasting, let me be seen in my fast. Right? This is love with dissimulation. You're making a pretense of love to the Lord, but your real audience is who? Other men. All right? Is that a grave danger to us today? Yeah, absolutely. Right? Guess what? As much as you say, I don't care what people think, you do. And that's something you've got to battle with. What is my motivation for doing this? Lord, check my heart. Show me. If I am doing this to be seen of men, Lord, I know that's not good. Let me love without dissimulation, without second motivation, without subtlety. So that's one avenue of love. That's important. Among the church, who else are you called to love? Jesus gave a new commandment in John 13, right? You are to love your brothers and sisters in Christ with a very, very high standard of love, as much as Jesus loved you, right? That's a very high bar. And yet we've never, ever, any of us, had a face-up where we were pretending love for someone within the church. Right? We've never, yes we have, right? And shame on us, right? Have you ever said the expression, "It's so good to see you," and you had to have that face because it wasn't good to see them? And that's what you said? Right? Well, why do we get to that situation? Well, one, because we probably got something that we haven't dealt with in the past. Right? Many things, right? Amongst sinners, there's going to be issues and conflicts and things that just need to be let go of. Right? They don't even need to be addressed. Right? This is that matter of throwing those mantles of love because I'm a sinner, you're a sinner. We sometimes say things we ought not. We're just giving grace. Right? Sometimes there's things that, and to do that, we have to be able to let go of something completely. Not just I'm saying it, but actually let go of it. If it's continuing to run around in your mind and you can't let it go, then guess what? You have a duty to go and seek reconciliation. Right? Well, they're the one who did me wrong. And guess what? The duty for reconciliation is both on the wrongdoer and on the wrong. So within the church, everyone has a duty. Right? Because these things, if you allow them to remain, they fester, they boil. It's like gangrene. It's things that have to be dealt with and lanced. So, if we're loving without dissimulation, it means that we will not be allowing bitterness, wrath, grudges, all those things that we're not supposed to have anyway, to dwell within us and to abide. Because while they're there, when we're interacting with that person that we've got some issue with, what will we have in front of us? A mask, a facade, something fake. And that's not loving without dissimulation. We're talking about genuine love. We're not talking Southern culture love, right? We have a politeness standard among the South that includes a lot of lies. Okay? We're not talking about that. We're talking about being genuine, genuinely caring and desiring the best for our brothers and sisters, knowing that they're sinners too. Right? And this applies outside the church, right? How we interact with all people, right? We should, that it's so good to say you think we've said that, out and about in town, where if you can't say that truthfully, don't say that. Hello, how are you? That's different, right? Does God value honesty? Very much so. You go read over in Proverbs about 6 things that the Lord hates. 2 of them involve lying, right? And so being conscious of what we say and what we really mean, letting those 2 things match up, right? Sometimes it's better just to keep your mouth shut if you can't say something truthfully, honestly, and mean it. Because if we've got some other meaning behind us, that's when we fall in that category of the double-minded man that's referenced in James. And the double-minded man is not stable in his ways because he's saying one thing and meaning or planning something else. Right? Now, I have no expectation that any of y'all are going to, say to me how much you love me and then come literally get me with a knife. And I'm really not even as concerned about this concept as wanting to point out a danger, okay? The danger that, what do we use when we talk verbally about somebody betraying someone else? What do we call that? Stabbing them in the back, right? Gossip, slander, being friendly to someone's face, and then when they leave, turning to your group, running them down, listing their flaws, right? Oh, I'm so good at that, right? Those kind of things will absolutely destroy your witness. They don't bring glory to God. They'll destroy fellowship within a church. And they can cause large, long-lasting rifts. And so this is something we've got to be on guard to, because how often is it easy to get in trouble with this little thing in our face? Very easy, right? Just that slip of the tongue. That's how we like to say it. But guess what? All those words that come out of our mouth, they're intentional. You meant to say them. Whether you meant to say them out loud, well, you said them. And so, it's not spontaneous jumping out of your face. Now, we can do a better job of installing filters. You know what I mean by filters? That's that gap between your brain and your mouth. So there's a pause time of, do I need to say this, right? The longer that pause, the better we are off, right? Less likely to put our foot in our mouth. My grandfather once claimed to be ambidextrous. He could put either foot in his mouth with equal ease. So learning to slow down and making sure that what I'm about to say, is it good? Is it edifying? Is it truthful? Or is it gossip? Is it slander? There's some really strong language written against the Corinthian church about why Paul didn't come back just then, because he was worried that those are some of the activities they were going to be engaged in. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Second Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 20. For I fear, lest when I come, I shall not find you such as I would, and that I shall be found unto you such as you would not. He says, when I get there, I'm worried that the way I hope you're governing yourself isn't going on, and you're going to be disappointed that I'm there to see it, lest there be debates, envying, wraths, strifes, backbitings or backstabbings, whisperings, swellings, tumults. Right? How do you get those things in a church? By love with dissimulation. Where you in one hand are pretending something is okay, And then over here, you've got a buildup of wrath, strife, whisperings. You've got factions. One of the real problems with the church in Corinth was they were broke up into different groups, not only in doctrine and who they were following, who was their point person. Well, we're of Apollos. I'm a Paul. I'm a Peter. Paul's like, is Christ divided? Did I die for you? Like, that's dumb. Don't be respecters. Don't be followers of men. But you all need to be united in following Christ. But there was a lot of different factions within there, as opposed to the pattern given, I believe it's in the Ephesian letter, about being unified in one mind, in one purpose, following together. And so, loving without dissimulation. Love is also useful, right? Love is not just lip service. Love has an action component. If you go read in 1 Corinthians, in the chapter that we use at weddings to describe what's love. Love is patient. Love is kind. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 13. There are, I think, 4 positive things, 8 negative things that it's not, and then another 4 positive things. So you're having to get this contrast of, well, what is love? And it's using the word charity there, but we're talking about the same concept. 1 Corinthians 13:4. Charity suffereth long and is kind. What if I'm pretending to be long-suffering, and when you walk away, I'm really unkind? It's not really love. That's pretended love. Right? Charity envieth not. That was one of those issues that was at the Corinthian church, right? There's full of envy. This, I want what you have, or the position that you have, or the fame, or the power, whatever it is. He said, that's not love. All right? Charity vaunteth not itself. To vaunt means to brag, to build yourself up, right? Nor is it puffed up, your arrogance, right? We've got to humbly serve and love one another, not be promoting our own interests, but promoting the welfare of the church and each other, not behaving itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, not easily provoked, thinketh no evil. Thinketh no evil. That one's significant. Have you ever attributed someone's actions or words beyond what they said to really the worst possible meaning it could have? Right? Well, they said this, but what they really meant was this. Right? When we're doing that, when we're assuming that people mean the worst, we're thinking evil of them and thinking evil of their intents, their intents, right? As opposed to giving the benefit of the doubt, right? I'm not saying to be foolish and ignore actions. Right? You learn someone's pattern of behavior and what they were truly meaning, but rather than just assuming something, you go with that follow-up question: do you mean this? Because as long as you have those misunderstandings about what you think someone's saying, and you're not willing to qualify it, then you're going to have this breach, this division between individuals. And that's true in the church. That's true in our marriages. That's true in any relationship. And if we are operating from a perspective of love, it's not going to be jumping to the worst possible conclusion. All right? What else we got here? Thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity. Right? Love is not happy when bad things happen to other people, nor is it happy when other people do the wrong thing. So-and-so got what was coming to them. Or, let's say you've got a brother or sister who is dealing with someone who's really wronged them, and they're explaining to you about how they're going to get that other person. How they're going to lay it out. They're going to just be vile and ugly. And there's going to be a part of you who's like, yeah, suck it to him. That's not the good part. That's not the part that we're to lean into. That's not the part that we're to encourage. All right? Speaking truth and love to each other is telling them the hard truths about what does the word say, even when there's a part of you, that man part, that wants to encourage them to do that wrong thing because you've been wrong before, and boy, would you like those aggressors to get something. So this is not much fun, Brother Jonathan. Okay. Let's go back to Romans. Romans 12, Let love be without dissimulation. So another way you could say that is unfeigned love. You don't have to turn there, but if you read over in 1 Peter 1:22, that was how he was commending the people because they had gotten to the point where they were obeying the truth unto the unfeigned love of the brethren. Right? How will all men know that you're a disciple of Jesus Christ? By the love you have one to another. Am I talking about something that's optional? That's gravy, that's secondary? No, this is core, right? If you want to be a follower of Christ, then you got to love as he loved and do the things that bring him glory and honor. Let love be without dissimulation. All right, second sentence. See, we're making progress. Abhor that which is evil, cleave to that which is good. All right, remember, abhor means to be utterly disgusted. Now, the thing about sin and evil is that the world tends to try and package it to you in a way that looks appealing. All right, y'all ever been to, I don't know, maybe Outback, one of those places where they've got the bar and they've got those big frosty mugs, right? Just, something being drunk out of a frosty mug, that just seems cool, seems refreshing. All right, well, that's kind of the appearance of sin to us as simpletons. But to God, if he were to show you what's inside that mug, y'all ever had to clean out one of those big garbage cans? The rain gets in there, and you got that kind of trash juice that's been marinating for 6 or 7 months. That's what's inside that frosty mug. The appearance may look refreshing, but to be utterly disgusted as God is, when you get close, you start to smell it, and you look at it, oh no, I don't want that. That's not good for me, despite however you market it, however you package it, however you appeal it. It's gross, it's vile. Let me flee from it, okay? So abhor that which is evil. We've been reading in Proverbs, and we've learned about getting into ourselves into trouble with sexual sin, right? Can a man commit adultery and not take it's like taking a live coal into his bosom? Can he do that without being burned? So that's kind of a weird expression. All right. Well, let's say you're cold, and there is a Weber grill over here with some charcoal, and you're cold, and so you pick one up and you put it in your shirt pocket. For a moment, you might be a little bit warmer. But what's the net result? Your finger's going to get burned, your body's going to be, there's a long-term damage, all right? And so those pursuit of sexual sin, right? Anything outside of the confines of marriage, anything outside of that is sexual sin, right? Anything outside of that. But if you're pursuing those things, there'll be some appeal to it, but the long-term damage and heartache and pain that's going to happen is like having a little coal in your shirt pocket. It ain't going to go well. Okay? So you're to flee from that, to abhor it, to hate it, not see how close can I get to evil without falling in. Okay? When you're reading God's word and you're discerning right and wrong, it's like, all right, here's something that's wrong. It's like there is a landmine that has been clearly marked. How close do I want to get to that? Right? Is that where you want to be tap dancing next to the landmine? I mean, literally, if they're in war-torn countries, there are landmines all over the place. There are people who go around and they mark them with flags so people don't get blown up by ignorance. Well, if that happened here and there's one out in the yard, what part of the yard would you not go anywhere near? The danger, the one that there's danger, and so you're going to go as far as you can away. Not see, well, not in danger yet. I mean, that is a nice looking landmine. I'd like to inspect that a little bit. Just see how close I can get to it. Look, Mom, I'm not touching it, right? Be disgusted by evil, not flirt with it. Okay? Cleave to that which is good. Hold on to it. Now, this cleave is the same word that was used when Paul tried to join himself to the church in Jerusalem. He tried to go and unite with him, and they're like, whoa. Because this is the first time he's come on the scene since his whole, terrorist incidents where he's been trying to arrest the people. He comes back and he tries to join the church. They're like, we don't know if we want to cleave with you. But Barnabas wound up sticking up for him, and he eventually became this massive benefit to the church. So cleave to that which is good. All right? Well, what's good? One guy came up to Jesus and said, "Good master," and he had a question. Jesus' response to him is, "Why do you call me good? There's none good but God." Now, what does that tell you about Jesus? Well, he was good and he was God. But among men, there's none good. Well, what do you think we ought to cleave close to? Cleave unto the Lord, right? That which is good. He defines what is good. Good is not a subjective, waffling, changing standard, right? This is something that is true and it's upright, and it's defined by God. It's not going to vary based on the winds of society, culture, friends groups. This is what's right. And he tells you about it. You don't have to depend on your feelings or your gut to tell you. Right now, he does give you the Holy Spirit to convict you and show you the right way. But it's all going to match up with his revealed word, which tells you where should you be? In his word, right? One who is well versed in the word has a greater ability to discern between right and wrong, between evil and good, as opposed to someone who's not, who is easily swayed, right? To be blown about with every wind of doctrine, right? You don't want to be like the piece of trash out here in the parking lot that, big wind comes by, oh, I'm coming over here. Well, the wind changes. Now I'm going over here, right? You want to be more like a tree where you got some roots, rooted and grounded. And so as things are going, you may have a little bend in your life, and then you got to recalibrate back to what's true and upright. But you're not going to get so far off center. Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good. Look, we covered a whole verse. We'll stop there.